Good evening. I am Pastor Carl, your host, and this is another Light for the Journey. Welcome. Glad that you're joining us. Just a few things that I would like to take care of before we get rolling here tonight. Light for the Journey is a ministry where we take a look at real life through the lens of Scripture, try to apply, a lot of times talking about the message. We'll certainly do that tonight. Applying it to our lives, how that plays out, and what God wants to do. We all want to live our lives in a way that winds up pleasing God and honors God. So that's part of what Light for the Journey is about, or actually mostly what Light for the Journey is about. If you're tuning in for the very first time, and because I know that we pop up on YouTube Live when we go live on YouTube, if you'll go to this address right here, www.discoveroakhills.com, it will take you to our church webpage, and on our church webpage you'll see live stream. Go to live stream, and then I think it's the third option down, Sunday night live stream will take you to this stream. And what that does for you is on that page there's also a chat room, and it will take us to a feature called chat. It's Discord. You'll have to sign up for it, and you can be a part of the chat. That's right. We like questions. We really like comments, and then we have a lot of folks get on and give us supporting scriptures and supporting thoughts. Not that they have to support my idea, but anyhow. So that takes care of that. If you like this, you're watching it on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and certainly give a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you don't like it. We're big enough to handle that as well. Okay, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff. With me, there we go. My wife behind the camera, and this is the chat room that I was talking about. She's quick on the uptake there. This is a chat room that you'll get into. I see that Jim is with us. Leon, it's good to see both of you guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. Glad you're with us. My co-host, Tim. Tim, you're in Terry's chair. They don't know that, but we shifted your chair out of here and put
a lot more room when Terry's
with Terry going.
They're not feeling scrunched.
Is it a promotion or demotion?
No, promotion.
Okay, I would have said lateral move, but hey, there you go. It certainly was a lateral move. But anyhow, this is Tim with me, and he is my co-host behind the cameras, making all this stuff happen. She's actually, probably doesn't like the title, but she really is a producer. She does what a producer does. Flashes cameras, gets all the wrong stuff up. Producers do that all the time, you know. And this is live. This program is live, at least when we're recording it. So, all right. Today, a little bit different. I didn't know. Did you know that there was another pastor in the house?
No,
that couple that was visiting from
really?
Judy. Yeah, Debbie was
I did not know that.
He was a pastor. So
okay, did he critique your sermon?
He said it was a good message.
Oh,
so I don't know, but maybe he was being kind, you know?
Well, pastors don't lie, so.
Pastors don't lie, huh?
So.
Well, they can be diplomatic a little bit. Said he appreciated my message. Okay. Debbie, for Tim and I, we can't read it. We almost have to always go to the full chat room if there's something there we need to see. She's looking for the button right there. You can tell Linda's usually the one back here, so she's always lost which button. Yeah. Debbie is awesome. Yes, we did need to see that. You're right for bringing that up, Debbie. Debbie is awesome.
But Jim didn't put it in bold, super capital letters.
No, Jim did that.
Yeah.
Jim said it, bold capital letters. Yeah, Jim, thanks for your help. Appreciate that. So today I was preaching on right in our own sight. Mm-hmm. Faith killers, and just to share with you, this is not in our scriptures that I have for us tonight, but I opened with Hebrews 11:6, and in 11:6 says this: "And without faith it is impossible to please Him, for he who comes to God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder to those who seek Him." And faith's a huge huge part of that. And the greatest reward, of course, is being with God at that great banquet table. Can't wait for that meal. I was describing that a little bit today. Mm-hmm. You listened to the message. You said you were paying attention. Didn't bring your notes. Did you have anything written in your notes that you really...
No. Well, I jotted down a few things, but the thing that struck me was you said about it wasn't fair for Caleb and Joshua to go through the penance of 40 years in the desert, just like the non-believers that weren't able to get in to the promised land and everything. But then it struck me as I was thinking about that, that in reality, I'm sure that wasn't the attitude that they had, because they were non-complainers.
Yeah. We weren't talking about attitude. We were talking about right and wrong.
No, I know. But I mean, so the point is, they would not have viewed it as being undue penance or unfairness from the Lord for them to have to suffer the same fate as the rest of the nation, the older people that were unbelievers. I think they would have just been happy. And I mean, in the end, we didn't get to it in today's sermon, but when they talk about it, when they're actually going to go in and conquer the lands, I mean, Joshua is fearless. Give me the hill country. I don't care. I'll go take it.
Yeah.
I got God on my side. So I think he thrived. That 40 years in the desert, he thrived. And of course, you talked about converting from being a shepherd to a military leader and leader of people, and being able to shepherd them through actually taking the promised land when they finally do get the chance.
Yeah, he went on that really long extended retreat.
Yeah. and then the other thing that, and it's off topic, I get off topic, because you didn't really talk about, well, you did mention it, but I've always wondered about manna, eating the same thing, manna every day in and day out. And Steve Green, I don't know if you remember his song about manna, where he was talking about banana bread and stuff, and just how the Israelites are griping because it was the same thing. It was like the perfect food, because apparently they could live on it and not have to have a variety. They must have gotten all the vitamins and protein and carbs and everything they needed out of manna.
Manna dumplings, right?
Yeah, and yet to eat the same thing every day for
40 years.
40 years. No ketchup, no mustard, just manna. So I don't know how many different dishes you could cook with manna, but I mean, God did provide, and it was nourishing, and it was good to live on.
Yeah. It beat the alternative. But they did complain.
Yeah. A lot of them did, and that's why they didn't end up in the promised land.
A bunch of whiners they were, So they were the victims, right?
Yeah.
We were victims. Yeah.
But you were also right to the point of talk about a people that had firsthand witnessed. I mean, they were generations in slavery, and they just witnessed, the miracle of the plagues and the release from Egypt, and then the crossing of the Red Sea.
Well,
and then when God is saying, well, this is where I'm going to send you, you just go and occupy, and then we can't do that. They had just seen all these miracles, and yet it didn't.
Right. And I didn't even mention, you got the pillar of cloud and fire,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, daily reminders.
What do we need? But today is like, and I was trying to connect those dots. Today, in this day and age, okay, several things that, you're defending Joshua and thought he had a great attitude about it. Let's turn it on Tim. What do you think your attitude would have been about 40 years of stomping in the desert?
Yeah.
Would you have had a great attitude?
I have to admit that I don't. I don't envision myself thriving in that environment, because I think I would grumble, because it would be too monotonous for me. And I like to camp a lot, but camping for 40 years straight and living, basically out of your backpack for 40 years.
Well, you know what's for supper.
Yeah.
You never had to worry about what was for supper, right?
Yeah, but still, I don't know that I would have appreciated it as much.
What did you think about the message? I mean,
no, I thought it was good.
Did you find it helpful? Did you find
because it really says, God doesn't want things from us; He wants us from us.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's he wants to know that He's first in our hearts, and He wants to know that we understand who He is, that He's our Creator, God, and our Savior. And I think that's the important thing. So it doesn't matter, like some of the parables that Jesus talked about, the old lady giving a couple copper coins and stuff, and that was a beautiful gift. And it wasn't a big gift by people standards, but God knew her heart, and that was all she had, and that was a beautiful gift because of the way she gave it.
Yeah. So, and you already mentioned then what you would have added that I didn't, and you would have gone deeper with the manna and talked to.
Because that's
was
just
already a long message. You tried to do that.
No, you actually cut it short because you skipped forward.
I did,
and then you went back a little bit to recapture some of the stuff. But yeah, you actually
because I wanted to drive that home. Just some of those points. For those of you who are tuning in and are with us, what we're talking about is today's message. And I think it would be a good time for us to actually go to the verse. Because it might help others to go to the verse. Therein, this was, I told the whole story of Joshua and Caleb, at least up through, going into the promised land, coming out with Moses out of captivity, and all from this one verse. That way, when you see the tassel, and this is after the people had rebelled, and you can see tassels on garments. That way, when you see the tassel, you'll remember all the commands of the Lord, and you'll observe them. Then you won't seek your own interests and desires that lead you to be unfaithful. I actually tonight picked a very
arcane.
That version is how I say kind of cleaned it up a little bit.
Yeah.
The actual. I read the King James and it goes and it talks about not unfaithful but going a whoring, and I'm like I didn't read that this morning because I was like, man, that just sounds so vulgar. But that's how God felt when the people. They wept all night long, and then Moses had to pray, because God wanted to wipe them out, and Moses prayed on their behalf and asked God, in His loving kindness to look, and then to just share with God, He felt like it was in their best interest. But what that verse actually says is that, doing right in your own sight. I'll read I'll read it from the version that I used this morning, which was the New American Standard. It says, "And it shall be a tassel for you to look at and remember all the commandments of the Lord, so as to do them, and not follow after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you played the harlot." Okay, and the whole premise here, guys, what we're really talking about tonight is the tendency that all of us have, and all of us are guilty of it, of seeing things from our perspective. We get this and we look at this and we think we know, instead of trusting in the Lord and not leaning on our own understanding, not doing what's right in our own sight. And we find it over and over and over in Judges that the good kings they obeyed the Lord, did what the Lord commanded, and the nation would prosper. The nation would not prosper in the days of Judges, not kings, but that when everybody did what was right in his own eyes, And so we're going through, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I'm looking at politics, and it doesn't matter what side you're on. Everybody is promoting what they believe to be right. Very few are promoting, hey, this is what the Lord says is right. And they might say, well, that's the preacher's job, but really it's not. If we're going to be in leadership, we would do well for those we lead. Like Joshua and Caleb, there were 12 spies. Only 2 of them got it. The other 10 were in their own eyes. And so how we view things and how we our perspective on things, and we tend to lean on that and think we know best. And when in reality, if we will lean on God and not our understanding, it made sense to me. If here in the church, we got some major issues going on. We got to fix furnaces and air conditioners. We got electric hookup. And so you're wondering, and we're getting all these $30,000 estimates and that kind of stuff. And the tendency is that we will want to stop and talk about it and fret over it and wring our hands over it and try to figure out what we're going to do. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as we don't lose sight of that God's got this. That's my favorite way of putting it. But Terry loves to say, God's not wringing his hands. God's not sitting on the throne wringing his hands over this stuff. And I come across, we love to quote these scriptures, that we are more than overcomers.
Right.
Yep. But what's that really mean? It means that we look at the problems, and it's like there's no problem that's too small, no problem that's too big, that God can't solve them. With God, all things are possible. We're more. Another favorite one. We're more than conquerors. Through Christ Jesus. And yet, when we step away from church or we step away from those scriptures, we find ourselves wringing our hands, much like the Israelites. They're, as they're looking in the Promised Land, and it's like, yeah, this is all cool, fine and dandy, but those might be great big grapes that it takes 2 men to carry. But hey, that's not the only thing that's big in there. Have you seen the folks? And then there's self-talk.
Yep.
Their perspective was, they didn't hear the Canaanites saying, "Oh, you guys look like a bunch of grasshoppers." They didn't say that at all. They assumed it. Said we look like grasshoppers in their eyes, and they saw this paraphrase, and we seem to them like grasshoppers, and it's like, well, who told you that? How do you know that?
And the funny part is contrasting with your message from last week, when the spies went into Jericho to scope it out before they attacked it, and now I have mental block.
Yeah. We're dealing with Rahab.
Rahab says, I know you're, by then they had already beat up on other city kingdoms, and she says, I know that you're going to take this city, so just have mercy on me and my family. And by that point, it's like...
No, actually, if you look at it, Ai was the first one. And in Ai, they lost because of one man's sin, because God said to go in and so they lost it, and they actually had people die because of one man's sin. Some of their own army. So the second city they go into is actually Jericho. So God is preparing them in their mindset. But the Israelites are assuming, instead of letting God do what God does.
I just thought that by her language that she had used, that she had seen the history of Israel conquering, and she knew it was inevitable. But she knew it was inevitable because of God, not because of recent history.
Right.
Okay.
Not because of recent history, because they're coming in, but not because of recent history, although they had some run-ins out in the wilderness. They did have run-ins. But when it's time to take the Promised Land, they failed miserably at Ai. Achan, I think was his name, was the one who took a couple bars of silver or gold, and he took a robe and something, I forget something else. And he buried him in his tent. And because he didn't do what God it told him, then when they went out, then the next battle they lost. So they won one, lost one. They then head to Jericho with the fortified walls, and nobody's getting in Jericho. And I'm sure that's when the spies went in. I'm pretty confident that they looked at the walls of Jericho and sizing up the walls, thinking, "There's no way. There is no way we can do this. There is absolutely no way." And and I'm guessing because of Joshua and Caleb, they're looking at it and thinking, this is going to take God. It's a good thing we got God on our side, because those are pretty big walls. Yeah. You know what I mean? It wasn't that they weren't seeing big walls. Yeah. They were looking at the walls and thinking, with God, all things are possible. You know, they're going back to God's commands. They're going back. This is the God who took us through saved us from the Egyptians.
But even so, 40 years prior, Joshua and Caleb were the only two guys that had the understanding that they could go in and take the land, and their faith didn't grow any weaker over that 40 years of God taking care of them in the desert. It probably grew stronger.
Yeah.
Because here they are as shepherds, being used to being out in the wilderness and having that many people all together, and for that large group to be able to be sustained on a daily basis, every day, getting their manna for 40 years, it's like, well, God's got it.
I had a professor who said it was probably close to 3 million people, or more, because when they counted in those days, they typically only counted the male.
Okay.
And so you would have girls, and you would have wives, and
Okay.
and I don't know if I don't even know. I can't recall if they counted servants or not, but just counting Israel, and then in that count, that's how it. So 1.5 million to 3 million people. That's a lot of people to be responsible for. That's a mega church. Yeah.
And then some, yeah.
Yeah, and if God didn't provide the manna, where in the world are they going to get enough?
Yeah, they couldn't. You couldn't raise enough food, even if they were in fertile land, to feed that many people that are constantly on a move.
On the move, right?
Right. So.
They weren't in the guerrillas.
Yeah.
And they took their food with them typically. As far as being herdsmen and shepherds. So. Anything coming off on the Leon and Jim's side of things?
Hang on.
Okay. Debbie is awesome. I like that. Jim is just showing his wisdom. Jim says, but then if it was in this situation where I was just saved by God from the Egyptians, I'd like to think I'd be more receptive. Jim, I would want to jump in and think that too, but you got to remember now, there's like at least 3 months. One of the interesting things is how quick we forget, and when we get past that emotional, psychological side of that, and it becomes just history. God's handiwork seems to subside a bit with us psychologically and emotionally, and so we have to be. That's why I have a job. Be quite honest. The whole reason why I have a job every Sunday is to remind us of how great God is and what God can do. And we need that. We need that to be refreshed and that kind of thing. So yeah, but yeah, Jim, I would like to think that too. But it still would be hard, and it was, and I'm sure it was for Joshua and Caleb. Hey everyone, Kate and I say hi. We had a late dinner. Well, I hope it was good. Nice sunglasses there, son-in-law. I appreciate that. Yeah, you need to get an emoji that's got a hat like yours. Anyhow, and what was the last one, Debbie? I didn't see the last one there from Jim. Rahab was an ancestor of Jesus because she was married a man from tribe of Judah. Hi, Ray. I can't read it all there, Tim.
And then we all absolutely have to be reminded, and that is true. I mean, you can't. I know I couldn't stay positive. I mean, I would share that I had a really bad yesterday. In talking to a mechanic, what I thought was hopefully another simple fix of something that I had paid to have fixed on a car a month ago turned out to be, no, your motor is shot. And it's like, and it was like, it was not a good day as I'm reflecting on this bill and how to turn that into a positive teaching lesson for my daughters that drove the car with no oil and didn't think much of it until it was in the death knock. And it's like, so it's still working on that. But having a little more time and then coming to services and everything, it is true that we're all believers and non-believers are going to experience the same circumstances. When it rains, it's raining on everybody, not just unbelievers. And
rain isn't necessarily a bad thing. We just don't like to see it. It keeps us from doing what we want.
The point is, the thing that the edge or the advantage,
the
blessings that the believers have is that they understand that no matter whether you're in a valley or at the top of a hill, whether times are good or bad, that God's got your best interest in mind, and that isn't so bad.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is you think about other people that maybe had more dire circumstances, like Job, that lost all his family and all his possessions and had medical issues and stuff, and it's like and you've said it before about, hey, I'm walking, I didn't have a heart attack, no
one told me I had cancer today.
Yeah,
it's a great day.
So,
no matter how much it rains.
Crowder, I guess, was up in the cities for a concert yesterday. I really would have liked to go. I don't know if
you don't have a vehicle to get there. Not to rub it in.
No, but I don't know if you've heard his latest song is "Let It Rain." Have you heard that song? No. Oh my goodness, that's such a great song. Let it rain down on me. You are God and I am not. Whatever your will, not mine. Let it rain. Mm-hmm. And just kind of eloquently reminding us that, we're in God's care, and what we might choose to happen to us might not be in our best interest. Like, I'll use the hypothetical situation. Buying a lottery ticket to win the lottery. Well, maybe that's not such a good thing, because now, instead of believing in God, you're going to believe in that pot of money that you put in the bank. And statistics show that a large percentage of lottery winners are bankrupt in 5 years, and that lottery winners 5 years, most of them aren't any happier than they were before they won the lottery. So it's not the money that's going to give us security. It's not the money that's going to keep us from not getting cancer or have some other catastrophe happen in our lives. It's God that's our source.
Yeah, and He's a rewarder of those who put their faith in Him.
Right.
And that's what Hebrews says. Without faith it's impossible to please Him, and He rewards those. He doesn't reward faith; He rewards those who trust Him. Basically, what we got here, Debbie's putting it up here from Leon. You wonder. Go ahead and read that, Tim.
Oh, sure.
Tim's right.
You wonder when they cry out to God to rescue them from slavery, what did that look like to them, and what did they think it would be? What looked like? It didn't take them long to complain and say that they would rather be back in Egypt, where they were complaining at least they'd get meals in Egypt and stuff, and they were complaining about we're going to starve out here.
Leon, that would have preached today too. That would have been a good way to another way I could have taken it. But you're absolutely right. The concepts that we get in our own mind, and so again, it's in our sight, right in our eyes, right from our perspective, from and it certainly happened to me after becoming a believer. I remember when my dad had a stroke, and he's in the hospital, and it was in the center of his brain, so he's hemorrhaging, and it's just an issue. We're just waiting for him to pass, and so that was on the 4th of July. He actually dies early in the morning on the 5th of July. I think it's about 6, right around 6 in the morning. It's close to that. And when he finally passes away, and he had a really strong heart, so he, but it was just hopeless. And I remember saying to God, I thought you loved me. I mean, I remember that on the 4th of July, looking out, standing there, and I was like on the 3rd or 4th floor, looking out this window, up above everything, and the sun is about to set, and it's in the evening, And the sun was it was a setting sun, and looking out there and into the sky and thinking, well, Lord, I thought you loved me. I thought you were supposed to take care of me. What is this? How is this love? And I was pretty angry at God at that time. I was kind of, shake your fist at God, but I was a brand new Christian. I wasn't, a year or two in the Lord, so I had a lot to learn, a lot of growing to do. God did take that and use it in my life and help, it built in me some character. It certainly built in me, without my dad around, I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. I grew a backbone, if you will. And you need to have that. If you're going to be a leader in the church, sometimes you have to, and you know this because when you lead, I have to do some things that are not popular.
Right.
That require, but we want to do things that please God, and that requires a backbone. And so God does that. But Leon is absolutely right. Go ahead, Debbie. There's some more there. Jim is chiming in. I don't want to.
So Jim says, I think that shows how sinful we all are. We complain that things aren't always perfect for us. Actually, Leon, I would say that Christians have their weak moments too when it comes to negative situations. And yeah, that's exactly what I'm admitting to facing yesterday when I, talking to the mechanic, and here I'm hoping that it's the same sensor, because the symptoms sounded to me similar, that he had just replaced, and that it was just gonna, faulty sensors, replace the sensors and off you go. And when he says, oh no, I think your motor's gone, and it's crank bearing, and then it's like the processing is like, oh, this is terrible.
Is this the newer car you just got too?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's just, but as I sit here thinking about it, I'm a lot more relaxed, and now it's more a matter of how can I use it as the advantage of an important life lesson. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's a substantial unexpected expense, but on the other hand, maybe this is important for my daughters to learn this lesson now, so that when they ever do buy a brand new car, they don't do the same mistake, and that they learn that, hey, you can't just, these cars aren't magic, they do require maintenance, and if something doesn't sound right, if you get those pesky little engine lights on, you maybe should stop immediately and figure out what it is before you keep driving it.
She don't run well without oil.
Oh my goodness.
But back to what Leon said, I know that for me, going into the ministry, if you're not a pastor, you always have this idea of what it's like to be a pastor. I don't know how to say this, but it sure isn't the picture that I had in my head. I sure saw this going differently in my head.
Yeah.
It's not even close. It's not even close. And so we have these preconceived notions of what it's like, and what that's why it's always horrible for you to go to your pastor and say, just what do you do with your week? What do you do with, and it's like, if you had any idea, and it would take longer to explain and try to just remember it, because you do so many and so much. And it's just there's nothing you can compare to. I actually had a guy who was in my congregation, was always telling me how to do it, how to do it better. And then he was coming through the process, helped him get in church. He came to me 6 months later, and he says to me, and I just stopped by my office, and he was now pastoring, and he said, Pastor Carl, we need to talk. And I said, okay. And so he said, I need to apologize to you. And I'm like, why? Because I don't expect people to get it, and I'm like, why? And it wasn't even on my radar. And he said, you know how I always came to you, and I always thought, how to do this better, or this would be a better idea, or doing it this way would be better. He said, I had no idea. I had no, and that's what I did, Tim. I just smiled at him. I just kind of laughed, and I said to him, no, don't worry about it. You don't have anything to apologize. You can't know. You just can't know until you're in that position. You can't know what it is to be like Moses. You just can't. And I have an inkling. It wasn't always fun. It wasn't always fun. but you can't know. But my son has a saying, I saw that going different in my head. That is what happens to us as believers, and Leon is absolutely right. That's not the picture we had. And we get these, and we need to let go, and we need to allow what God wants to do. I'm pretty sure that Joshua never dreamed when he was buying out the land that he was going to do 40 more years pounding sand out of his sandals. It just
that's just a generation of walking in the desert.
Yeah,
that's a lot of camping.
That is a lot of camping. And then they had snakes they had to contend with. They just had a bunch of stuff. There are days when there's no water and it's hot and their tongues are hanging low, and their ears are hanging low with them, kind of stuff. I'm sure it never dawned on him, that, this is what it is to follow the Lord. Okay, kind of thing. And yeah. And coming back to what Jim said as well, I guess I was thinking about it in what Jim said and what Leon said there at last. I think there's a secret here that Caleb and Joshua probably locked into in their mindset, and I try to live there too. And Scripture teaches us that we should always be grateful or thankful. Give thanks always. Scripture says that. Give thanks always.
In all circumstances.
Because and Larry Burkett says this when he's on the radio and someone asks him, and I love this, he said, and they ask him, well, how are you doing? And he says, better than I ought to be, And that's really true for all of us, because we don't get what we deserve. What we deserved was the cross. That's just the truth of it. We don't get what we deserve. We get way better than we deserve. And so he usually says, better than I deserve. It's one of his thoughts. But it's a mindset, and I think it helps us. It doesn't mean, though, Jim, it doesn't mean that we still don't get, lose it along the way. Sometimes, some days are harder than others.
Yeah. And life is going to have its share of ups and downs, and sometimes you wonder if, in the story of Job, when the devil is testing Job, is this from God or is this from somebody else? And I guess I come back thinking that no matter what I'm going through, someone's experienced 100 or 1,000 times worse than me. You think about concentration camps during World War II.
Yeah.
You think about other whole generations of people and that have been slaughtered and everything. You think about people that were slaves in years ago and stuff. And we're just as humans, we're crybabies. We want everything to be nice and comfortable, and we
have easy chairs at home, right?
Oh yeah. And so if we don't have the padding, or the temperature isn't just right, if it's too hot, too cold, or we don't have the variety in the food, or we don't have the nice brand new car or whatever to drive, it's kind of like, well, it's easy to complain because you see somebody that might have something a little nicer or whatever. And I'm sad by the fact that people think that happiness is in things and not in God, because you can never have enough things to make yourself happy if you don't have God.
Yeah.
So you might have enough things to distract you for a while from feeling the need for God, but ultimately I think you're going to have that emptiness that's not going to allow you to be happy.
Yeah. Paul said it, I learned to be content in all things. I know what it is to be hungry. I know what it is to be well fed.
Right.
I know I've had both extremes, and I've been there, done that. And it comes from knowing that the Lord is leading you. That like I said it today, and I said it to Debbie as well. For me, paycheck is on Thursday. Okay. On Wednesday, I'm not thinking about, well, will I have anything to eat on Wednesday? The big question on Wednesday will be is, what do I want to eat? Okay. But being a child of God in faith is, if I'm living my life and I'm trusting the Lord said, I know you need all this stuff. What we need, not what we want, but what we need. Well, I might get some macaroni and cheese. What I want is Kraft macaroni and cheese, but we get the cheap brand, the generic brand. Yeah, the great value brand.
Walmart brand.
It just doesn't taste that. It's not that tasty, But manna every day. You said it. Does it have to taste different, really, for it to do its job? For God to give us what we need, and to learn to be thankful. I think is part of this. Part of the secret to all that is just an attitude of gratitude. Helps with that.
Yeah. So even like I was thinking about that. Think of what your favorite food is. Like, let's say it's lasagna or pizza or steak, and let's just say that's the only thing you can eat for 40 years. Well, that and quail, I guess.
Yeah. Right. Well, but that was only for a couple days.
Yeah. So you would get so tired of eating that one food, you would hate it. I mean, I used to like liverwurst. And then going to college, sometimes that was all you could afford, and liverwurst sandwiches got to be awfully boring. And now I can't look at the thing because I ate too much of it, and it was just like
here we are again, and it comes right back to the title of the message. It's a faith killer when we lean on our own understanding, when we live life through our eyes, our sight, our perspective on things. We lose the real perspective. We lose truth. Well, we actually lose. Yeah. We're in a delusion. We lose truth. And I find that I'm in a school system, so I'm with educators. These guys, doctor's degrees, and and I'm baffled by how, Jim, I know you're a professor, okay, but I think you're an exception rather than the rule. But I'm baffled about how the common sense element so often is not there. For example, and I gave an example today. We don't discipline the kids. And then we wonder why. Last 2 Fridays ago we had a kid come in the library and make 4 911 calls. Hung up, they came. Called again, they come, hung up, they come again, find no one, find no emergency, and we're dealing with the police, and nothing's done with that. Nothing's done about it's mind-boggling, and the kids they're just disrespectful, and there's not, there's no real discipline that comes, and I'd been out of school for a long time, so now that I'm working back in school, for me, it's sort of like when you're in the system, it's more gradual. It's kind of like your kid growing up. You have to mark it on the wall if you want to track it, because you don't really notice how big they're getting until it's time to buy them new shoes or new pants because theirs is getting real short on the bottoms. And it's like they grow up under your eyes, before you know it, and you don't realize it. But for me, being out and coming back after 30 years, and it's like, what world did I just step in? What world did I step in?
So let's see.
Hi, Ed. It's good to see you, Eduardo.
Jim says, I would get tired of eating steak every day, and I love steak.
Yeah, we would.
And Leanne says, my dad will eat that as long as I can remember, too.
Liverwurst.
Oh, liverwurst, okay.
Yeah. And the bottom one, what did Jim say there in the bottom? I can't read it.
Oh, and the bottom one is, we give kids participation trophies. Instead of showing them where they went wrong, we let them get away with everything. I run into that with college students all the time. Yeah, I agree with you exactly that the younger generation really has a sense of entitlement, that they think all these things just magically appear and they're deserving of all these life perks and everything, and that's not how life.
Well, and unfortunately, what's going to happen, what will happen for them is they'll get to their 30s and 40s, and then they'll figure it out, and it'll be a rough lesson. Because in reality, I'm not going to give them, this. They all think that they want their college paid for, and what Bernie Sanders is promoting, socialism. That's not going to work.
No.
Because there's just the money isn't there now. Actually,
right?
It's not there now. And if you can't pay for it, then you don't get it. We can only borrow for so long.
I worry about that sometimes, wondering how people don't see the obvious, that you can't keep borrowing your way into prosperity like our government is continuing to.
I hear horror stories about Venezuela, and they throw their money in the streets. They don't even bother to pick it up. It's so worthless.
Wow.
Because if you just keep printing up more money, it loses value, and before long you need like $800 to buy a loaf of bread. So why would you pick up a 20? It's equivalent of a penny, kind of thing. It's worthless. Anyhow, yeah, boy, that's a bunny trail. That is a real bunny trail.
But it gets back to that complaining issue, and not being satisfied with the things that God has given us, and then having time and again seeing God work on your behalf, and then when you get to that rocky patch, all of a sudden forgetting all of those life lessons that God got you through, and then just woe is me, my life is so pitiful, how can I ever overcome this? I'll never survive.
I said it this morning, how many miracles does it take before it takes? What's the magic number here? That we have to, in not trusting God, they didn't get in the promised land, and if we're not going to have faith and trust God, we're not going to get to heaven, which is the greatest promise God. Greatest. Yeah. I go to prepare a place for you, Jesus said. And if I go to prepare a place, John 14, if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come and get you, that you may be where I am. And in my Father's house there's many rooms. If it wasn't so, I'd have told you so, he said. And I'm going to come back and get you. It's paraphrased, but it's pretty close. Boy, we've been talking for almost an hour here. I am... But it's good stuff. Jim, Leon, I have appreciated what you brought to tonight's program. It is. I'm all for if you have better ideas, but for me, I think the really critical to count our blessings. There's a song, count your blessings, name them one by one. There's some wisdom in that. Mm-hmm. It goes right along with being thankful. So, hey, anything you guys want to add? Man, hi, lady chosen, Karen.
Nothing really there except some hellos.
Yeah. Well, prayer concerns. How, guys, is there anything we can do to pray for your ministries or your church?